Hello, Michael. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear
Yes, I
you,
can hear you. Hear you.
Alan.
All right. All right. Michael, over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today's um, webinar. Basically, for us to come together as a community to discuss a pressing issue, which is around financial inclusion for persons with disabilities. Um, And on the call, on the webinar today, I have two persons, qualified personnel who will be having conversation together this afternoon to discuss what is the role of the financial sector in promoting financial inclusion for persons with disability, moving from commitment to action. I'm not the only one on the call, as I mentioned um, earlier. I'm also here with Dr. Adibukola Adebayo, and also here with Susan Iwoma, who would be having this conversation together this afternoon. I want to confirm if you are there on the call by just saying hello, Dr. and Susan.
Yes, I am here. Good afternoon. Yes.
Yes, good afternoon, Doctor. If Dr. Dibayo can hear me, um, sir, kindly confirm you can hear me by just saying hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you, Doctor.
Yeah,
Good
good
afternoon, sir.
afternoon. Happy to be here with you.
Yes, thank you so much. So we'll be moving into the conversation right away. But before we go into that, I would like to take the profile of our guests that will be having this conversation together this afternoon. As they usually say, this is ladies first. So I will start with reading the profile of Susan Iwoma. Susan Iwoma is a leading gender disability inclusion and social development experts with over a decade of experience shaping policy, system, and partnership that advance equitable access to opportunities for persons with disability. She is the executive director of Susan's Unique Oasis Foundation, where she drives strategic initiatives at the intersection of disability inclusion, economic empowerment, and social justice. For a fact, she's a wheelchair user and a polio survivor that brings both lived experience and technical expertise to high-level engagement with government, development partners, private sector stakeholders, influencing inclusive finance, governance, and accountability framework across Nigeria. Um, let's let's welcome Susan to the call once again today. I want to confirm if our sign language interpreter is here with us, and if we can also see the sign language interpreter. Can we see the sign language interpreter? All right. Thank you for spotlighting the sign language interpreter. I'll go on to read the profile of Dr. Adebukola Adebayo. It's a long one, but I will just summarize it. Dr. Adebukola Shehu Adebayo is a specialist in disability inclusive development, governance, and public policy with 20 years of work experience in the not-for-profit and the development sector. He is the founder and chief consultant at the Inclusive Development Consults Limited, Nigeria. He is also the co-founder and board member of the Human and Organization Resource Development Center, Nigeria. Dr. Adebukola Adebayo holds consultancy roles on disability inclusion in a number of government agencies and reputable both local and international development organizations like including the international the National Commission for Persons with Disability, the World Bank, and Sightsavers, and many more. Since 2012, Adebukola Adebayo has actively involved in helping strengthening implementation of disability laws and policies at both the national and state levels through the provision of direct technical assistance and expertise to disability commissions and agencies across 21 Nigerian states, as well as other line ministries, departments, and agency MDAs, including the Federal Capital Territory and the national level. Let us also welcome Dr. Adebukola Adebayo once again. So I would like to start with Susan as we drive into the conversation itself. But before we do that, I would like to give a background of why we're having this webinar at this particular point in time. And the purpose of this webinar, of this discourse, is so that we can have a chart on the state of financial inclusion for persons with disability in Nigeria and across Africa. What are the gaps that exist, and how can financial institutions begin to play both short-term and immediate roles to ensure that we promote financial inclusion for persons with disability across Nigeria and at Africa at large? And what are financial regulators? What are they also supposed to look at and to enforce? And what should accountability look like for both these financial regulators and even for persons with disability in themselves, disability advocates, and policymakers? I know, as we might know also, that Nigeria has a target of achieving 95% of financial inclusion, which is a target set by the Central Bank of Nigeria. However, despite the advancement and commitment across board, banking services, both traditional and digital platforms, uh, advances in those areas, persons with disability has continued to experience a significant barriers, which is also showcasing a wide from inaccessible digital banking platforms to inadequate trained financial personnel that they come in contact to on their daily basis while doing transactions. These obstacles have hindered the financial independence of persons with disability and limiting their participation in the economy. Why national data on financial inclusion disaggregated by disability remains limited. Existing data has shown that persons with disability are widely unbanked and excluded from the financial sector compared to other persons without disability. And as we know that we have at least 15% of Nigerian population as persons with disability, which makes persons with disability the largest minority group in our society. In achieving our country's financial inclusion target of 95%, it will be impossible without integrating persons with disability. So I would like to start looking at this background. I would like to start with Susan this afternoon. Susan, what is financial inclusion? What does financial inclusion means for persons with disability, for an average person with disability?
Okay, thank you so much for the background and what have you. So first, you've given us the statistics of persons with disability in Nigeria approximately, because of course we do not have the right figures. But financial inclusion for persons with disability in Nigeria has improved in policy language, but significant gaps remain in practice. It's a different thing to improve in policy language, but gaps in practice remain. And what do I mean by that? I mean policies such as the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act and the Nigerian financial sector's financial inclusion strategies. These two documents affirm inclusion in clear terms. Now, moving from that, access to credit, loans, and tailored, underline the word, tailored financial products is still limited for persons with disabilities. Many are unbanked. Many persons with disabilities are unbanked. Others are underbanked. You would ask me why? Because of physical barriers. We were doing the introduction, you stated clearly I'm a wheelchair user. Because there's no bank around me, it will take me to spend money to go and get money. So what if I wake up and I do not even have money to step out and go and get this money? So part of digital platforms and rigid lending criteria. This also does not help the issues of persons with disability to access loan. Another important aspect for me would be data disaggregation. You cannot plan from a demography you do not have their data. Data disaggregation on disability is weak. And this means that financial institutions often do not know the size, they do not know the needs or the behavior of persons with disabilities as customers. It's a different thing to have my money in your bank. It's a different thing for you to say, oh, in this particular branch, do we have inflow of wheelchair users? Do we have inflow of the deaf? So that you make appropriate, reasonable accommodation to suit the needs of this set of customers. And then another thing is that many persons with disabilities will rely on informal financial systems because the formal ones remain inaccessible. So on the whole, I would say that commitments exist, with the documents I have pulled out, but implementation lacks, and that's a huge gap. That in itself leaves many persons with disabilities outside the financial system, because as we know, disability is not homogeneous and it's not one cap fits all. What is access to me might not be access to Dr. Adebayo, might not be access to the next person or two other persons or even five other persons. So it's important that even financial systems begin to make their platforms accessible for persons with disabilities if we can drive inclusive financial systems in Nigeria. Thank you.
Hello. Yes.
Yes,
Thank
hello.
you so much. Yes, thank you so much, Madam Susan. A takeaway from that is that why on policy, financial inclusion, there are financial inclusion policies or policies that speaks to financial inclusion for persons with disability. But in the reality, in terms of physical accessibility for persons with disability, ensuring that many of them who are either unbanked or unbanked, the reality is yet to be seen for persons with disability. Thank you so much for that opening statement, Madam Susan. So moving to Dr. Adebukola Adebayo. Sir, you can also then give us, given your expertise around advocacy for persons with disability, especially providing technical support or an assistance to major ministries of government, agencies, and even international and local partners. What do you think is the state of disability inclusion for persons with disability in Nigeria and across Africa? Doctor.
Okay, thank you very much. If you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
When we talk of the situation of financial inclusion for persons with disabilities in Nigeria, my immediate response is that it is still very, very low. Of course, I don't think there has been any major studies to look into this critically, extensively. We have seen some baselines. We have seen some baselines here and there, but then the situation is still quite. What the research and data is showing is that so much still needs to be done. Now, in 2013, the Central Bank of Nigeria initiated a program to try and capture the concerns of persons with disabilities in Nigeria's financial in Nigeria's financial sector. They tried at that point to launch. I think there was this MSMEs Development Fund, 2% of which was devoted. I think that MSMEs Development Fund was about 200 billion, and 2% I think was devoted to persons with disabilities. And realizing the fact that persons with disabilities are generally locked out of the financial system, because not only when you go and save your money in the bank that you are captured in the financial system. There are so many things that are involved in the financial system, that apart from just putting money in the bank or saving your money in the bank, that persons with disabilities are not able to access, like loans, bank credits, and other products and services rendered within the financial sector. So I think the central bank realized this, and they tried to put a policy in place to ensure that persons with abilities are able to access the MSMEDF at that point in time. But so much was done, but very little was achieved because of the lack of the necessary legal policy and institutional frameworks that would have helped to drive that and sustain that initiative. So, as we speak, looking at the banking sector, the insurance sector, looking at the stock exchange market, the money market, and all the various facets, even the fintechs that are also, that have become so significant now, the involvement of persons with disabilities is quite. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Doctor.
So the involvement of persons with disabilities is not anything to write home about. Maybe when we begin to look at the nitty-gritties of, the more details, we'll begin to unpack all of these challenges. Susan has highlighted the key issues, issues of physical access, issues of digital access, issues of um, access to services, customer relations, issues of employment, even for persons with disabilities within that sector, and so on and so forth. So there's so much to talk about as we go on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So thank you, Doctor, for also creating that background for us. First of all, to showcase what has been done, especially by the major financial regulator in Nigeria, which is the central bank, by mentioning that in 2013, that there was the SMEs fund, which was pushed out to help both small, medium enterprise, and that 2% of that fund was also allotted for persons with disability or businesses led by persons with disability. And giving us that background is to show us that widely their policies, widely their policies, but implementation has been a very great concern and challenge to ensuring that we have persons with disability being financially included in the Nigerian economy or our economy as a whole. So I would like then to now direct this question to Vivian. If we talk about financial products or services, be it credit facility, be it being able to use banking digital platforms to accessible banking or facilities or physical office and the likes, getting loans or even grants from financial providers, especially the banking sector. So I would like to say, to ask you, what is your personal experience, which is one gap that you think in the short time we can look at or advocate for as disability advocates or as development partners or even as persons with disability, that if we can pick this gap in the short time, we can start from there. Susan.
Okay, so for me personally, part of the things you are talking of, from my experience, I've had several experiences, but from my own experience, one of the things I have found out to be really traumatic for me visiting a bank is the fact that it's inaccessible. My bank had been hacked. had lost some money, and having access into the facilities, and where the workers nice, they were even giving me the option of coming me to take details and all of that. But that removes confidentiality. Who knows where the leakage in my details got out? So across disability, we need access. And like you said, if there's any way we can move, from commitment to visible actions, we have to specifically design products to be inclusive, whether it is loan, whether it is flexible collateral, whether it is microcredit, whether it is startups, grants, and even technical support. How are they ensuring that person? When doctor was speaking, he talked about the fintech and what have you, which is now the order of the day. Who ensures that customers with disabilities also have proper understanding? Who ensures that we have, the requisite knowledge so that on equal basis, or is it believed that we do not have money that should go in? I mean, is it expected that we do not have money, we can't go into business, we can't do loans and all of that? It's important that we embed accessibility standards in every product and service, not as an afterthought, from inception. And this, for me, will only happen when from inception you are collecting disability disaggregated data, like I said previously, to understand needs and measure progress. That is where you would know that in so branch, so number of people with disability visited. Oh, it has reduced in this month. What happened? What is the problem? Every customer is important as it were. And you cannot do this without partnering with organizations and people like Dr. Adebayo, who is an expert in this area, governance, policy, and what have you, to co-create solutions that speaks across clusters. They cannot decide because they don't wear the shoe, they don't know where it is. They need to also engage people who are knowledgeable in this field to give them, traction of where they are going. And more importantly, training of frontline staff cannot be underestimated because they feel they are assisting us by coming out. My money is inside the facility, and you are coming outside to take my details. No, that's not that way. You are eliminating bias if you have to come out. It makes me feel isolated when you have to meet me outside, maybe because even the security entrance at the banks, the different facilities cannot accommodate me. So for me, I would say that inclusion in design plus resources will give us measurable results for everyone.
Thank you so much, Susan, for the high opener in terms of short-term recommendations, fix that financial inclusion providers or financial help services providers can put in place to ensure financial inclusion for persons with disability. And to note that you mentioned accessibility, data collection, data disability data, disaggregated collection, needs assessment to understand the needs of various disability clusters, and also the call for partnership, saying that we cannot ensure financial inclusion for persons with disability without bringing persons with disability together in order to even create products or even services. And by ending by saying that training of most especially front desk officers at bank to understand what what disability inclusion really means. Thank you so much, Susan. So I'll be going to Doctor. Doctor, we know that you have both the continental experience and also the international experience, both as a person living with disability and your own core area or specialty. So I would like to ask you, Doctor, what are the both innovations and global standard practices that financial inclusion or financial service providers, maybe being the banking sector, or even the fintech sector, can then bring to play, and when it comes to creating financial products and services for persons with disability. Doctor.
Okay, if you can hear me, yes, there are quite
Yes,
a
sir.
number of innovations or practices, good practices that we can also put to use in Nigeria. Um, First and foremost, when conceiving the idea of a bank, we know the owners, the venture capitalists who float bank businesses should know that we are dealing with every member of the public, both the literate, the illiterate, the educated, the uneducated, those informal businesses, those that are running informal businesses, and so on and so forth. And so the people with disabilities got across all these various segments of customers that the bank targets. So you have educated PWDs, you have uneducated, you have literate, you have illiterate, you have PWDs who are running formal businesses, you have PWDs who are running informal businesses, and you have PWDs into real estate, into oil and gas, into so many sectors of the economy. And so it is necessary for banks to realize that there's no disabled money. Money is money. And your target is to take the as much share of the financial market as you can. When we're talking of financial system, like I said, we're not just talking of only the banks. You have the insurance companies, you have stock brokerage, you have so many things within the financial sector. You have investments and so on. So, they should know that they are dealing with everybody. And so we must design a a bank that can bank for everybody without compromising any banking standards, without compromising on any of the regulatory frameworks, that regulates the banking sector. So you won't say because you want to be disability inclusive, you will not comply with all the necessary regulations, or you will lower standards. That's not what we're asking for. That's the first philosophy that must take note of. That you are being disability inclusive does not mean you are lowering standards, or you are not complying with all the necessary regulations, including those that have to do with the safety and security of customers and their funds. That's one. Number two is that in so doing, by observing the first point I said, then ultimately you will then realize that automatically you will be complying with so many other disability inclusive practices. For example, you will know that when you are designing your buildings, your infrastructure, your physical infrastructures, you will make them accessible. You make them, ensure all the compliance with all necessary accessibility guidelines and regulations physically. And then, of course, we all know that we are all doing digital banking in our generation now, e-banking and all whatnot. You also ensure that your digital infrastructure comply with the W3C regulations. ensuring that everyone can access your websites, your apps, and so on and so forth. So you meet all the necessary accessibility regulations, both physical and digital. All right. And then you also ensure that when you are bringing in people to run the bank, to work as staff, you train them, your training modules. I doubt if any bank in Nigeria now has any training module that speaks to disability inclusion in their onboarding system. So you ensure that those you are bringing in, from the gate man to the cleaners to the cashiers to name anybody that works within the financial sector, to the managing director and board members, that they are all well trained to understand disability inclusiveness, so to say. Because if the people come in, no matter what the policy or whatever you have, philosophy you have, no matter how accessible your buildings and digital infrastructures are, if the people who are going to operate on all of this come in and they are not properly schooled to understand what you mean by disability inclusive financial system or banking system and all of that, then it's not going to work. So it has to be deliberate. There has to be a policy, training modules to show that, oh yes, everybody coming in here must know what disability inclusion is, as far as banking is concerned, as far as insurance is concerned, as far as the stock market is concerned, as far as the investment, all of the financial subsectors of the financial sector are concerned. We must have training modules that speak to all of this. That's the next level. And then following that is the designing of products and services that take cognizance of persons with disabilities. Now, there are quite a number of models around the world that are being, used. For example, you could lower interest rates for persons with disabilities. Okay, that's one model. You could also ensure the policy of zero balance in your account, because there are some banks that do not insist that you must have a fixed amount of money in your account. The least you can withdraw up to, you know what I mean. So it's standard practice to ensure that for persons with disabilities, you try to bring that as low as possible. Then when it comes to issues around withdrawals, savings, using the banking services generally, there are products that you develop to target persons with disabilities, either as individuals or as groups. Okay? So quite a number of products and services, there are so many that we can't begin to talk about all of them here. But they are all there in the public domain that you can develop to specifically target persons with disabilities. And then you can also ensure that your regular products and services are also inclusive, disability inclusive. So you are using the twin track approach. That is, you are designing disability specific products. For example, products that help a person with disability to access assistive devices, products that help persons with disabilities to build capacity to be self-employed, knowing that people with disabilities face difficulties in gaining employment. Products that help persons with disabilities who are running their own businesses to build accessible workplaces, and so many that these are disability specific. And then other general products, okay? And so the products that target housing, products that target owning of assets, products that target education, and there are so many banking products. So you also mainstream disability inclusion into those ones as well. So these are a few of them because of time, that they are quite so expansive. They are quite very, very much of them. But banks, it's not new that banks now begin to realize that persons with disabilities are a very active part of the, financial customer base. And leaving them out, any bank, any bank that is wise now that targets that group knows that they are reining in a lot of savings because bank depends on savings. Okay, so they are reining in savings from PWDs as well, which is good for them. All right, let me hold it there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Doctor, for one letting us to know that there's nothing called disabled money. Money is money, either from persons without disability or persons with disability, and that any bank who is excluding persons with disability are missing out on a big customer base, which persons with disability are like active players in the economy. And if your product or services are not capturing them, then you are missing out in a long time. And for letting us to know, advising not just the banking sector, but other providers when it comes to financial products and services like the stockbrokers, the mortgage banks, the investment companies, and the likes, to ensure that they use the twin track approach in ensuring that one, they are creating services and products that are targeted at persons with disability, and also ensuring that persons with disability invest in ensuring that persons with disability participate in the economy. Thank you so much, Doctor, for that insight. But before I go to Susan, Doctor, I will also I'd like to ask you again that what are the roles of financial regulators in ensuring that all of these things that we are talking about, the gaps, the innovations, the global standards that we are seeing, and even recommendations that we are making today, what are the roles of financial regulators to ensure that we move from commitment to action?
Okay, well, that's very clear. Of course, like the CBN, the NDIC, and all of them, and even the non-banking regulators like the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. All of these. One thing is clear: they have to review the subsisting regulations to make them more disability responsive. I know that the current Central Bank Act talks to some extent to disability inclusion. The central bank itself has also issued policies that govern or provide for disability inclusion. Like I told you the other time. But the implementation of these policies is another thing, and that's what speaks to what your question is. So can we move from policies to practice? So it's about the central bank and all other regulators of both the stock market, the insurance subsector, investment banking, development banking, all of those, the mortgage and all of that. It's about implementing and enforcing these regulations. Even the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities as well. Yeah, we have an accessibility regulation that needs to be enforced. So there are accessibility standards that banks must comply with. Okay, so or any financial institution must comply with. So we have all the regulations, I think, to an extent, even though some of them needs review. We need to review them, take a second look at them again, That is one. Implementing the existing regulation or even reviewing and making them stronger. Another thing is setting quotas. Quotas. Okay, it is not out of place. Just like you have employment quotas to say, look, um, 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 I know that there's a lot of investment funds out there in Bank of Industry, Nigerian Development Bank, and African Development Bank, Bank of Agri, and all of that. A lot of development funds, a lot of investment funds, available, and many of these funds are channeled through the regular commercial banks or microfinance organization institutions. So we expect that just as we have 5% quota on employment, a certain quota of investment funding or development financing should also be committed to supporting businesses owned by persons with disabilities. So, putting quotas, using quotas to promote financial inclusion of persons with disabilities is a very strong strategy that we can use to drive financial inclusion for persons with disabilities. All right. So this is one thing that they can also do, apart from implementing all other regulatory frameworks that are existing. So I told you of the 2% of the MSME DF that the central bank committed to PWDs around that 2013 or so. So such should be revisited, and we should reactivate some of those opportunities. So a lot of PWDs can come into the space, enjoy the benefits of some of these funds, in the bank. And then, of course, the need for even OPDs, Organization of Persons with Disabilities themselves, they also have quasi-judicial functions or regulatory functions to hold the banks accountable. Okay, we have cases where persons with disabilities were denied, who use wheelchair couldn't go into banks to get services, or you hear banks denying blind people ATM cards for one reason or the other, and so on and so forth. Or some people even deny the opportunity of even coming into the bank to do business. So all of this, OPD should monitor all this, and the National Commission for PWDs itself. They need to monitor all of these processes and take up banks, report banks or financial institutions that flout these rules to the regulators, to the central bank. I've not seen OPDs sending protest letters or complaints to CBN or to NDIC or to any of these. When the bank folds up, and NDIC is giving back depositors some money, PWD should be prioritized. These are areas where OPD should put advocacies into to ensure that the financial system is more disability friendly. So it's not only the banks alone, it's not only the regulators alone, OPDs, the National Commission, and so on, all have roles to play. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Yes, thank you so much, Doctor. Just to summarize that in 3 words, one is to review and enforce the current regulations that we have. Then two is setting quotas, as we have for the employment quota of 5%, for development funds or interventions, financial interventions targeted for persons with disabilities. We should have quotas. And lastly, thirdly, is the role of OPDs, especially disability agencies and commission like the National Commission for Persons with Disability. Thank you so much, Doctor. So moving to Susan, though Doctor has given us an intro to the next question I want to put to you, is what are the roles that persons with disability themselves, there's no disability inclusion without persons with disability. There's no inclusion without us. So what are the roles that persons with disability needs to ensure that we have a disability-friendly financial ecosystem? Susan. Susan.
Okay, so thank you very much. For me, I would say that, of course, the acronym is there, nothing about us without us. Like Dr. rightly stated, we need to, hold the banks accountable, ensure that there are accountability mechanisms to track progress, because we cannot even know if we don't try at all. It's important that organizations of persons with disability engage. This is very, very important that we engage to prevent unintentional, as it were. Let me just excuse it as unintentional exclusion. This is to also ensure that OPDs will ensure that the banking sector adopts the universal design. Doctor mentioned the universal design that the National Commission has. So the question is, are we holding them accountable to ensure that, accessibility standards from start to finish, not just an add-on, is what we have? Do we provide, alternative methods, alternative ways to ensure that we drive inclusion? Because again, we don't just leave the ball of the complaints for the financial inclusion space, because they might not know. If they knew, they would do better. But as it were, we need to be the drivers of this conversation. We need to ensure that there is a regulatory reporting mechanism, so that at least we have information at our fingertips. The updates will be even on their website. Doctor talked about accessibility on the website. If we have most of this information, on public dashboard, showing progress over time, having feedback platforms where we can even report barriers, where we can also appraise them. There's room for appraisal. There's room to be able to say, okay, in our banking sector, these are the ones who are doing exceptionally well. I think it will help. And also, if persons with disability can also be co-opted as third-party auditing team, so that for every audit that needs to happen to check inclusion, performance, and accessibility, organization of persons with disability and comprises persons with disability themselves are part of this. This way, I think it will help to like institution accountable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan, for that insight. There's a need for persons with disability themselves to hold financial institutions accountable, especially when there are cases where they have to use product or services, majorly ensuring that there are systems put in place to ensure that products and services bear in mind the universal design. Thank you so much, Susan. So to round it up, I'll come back to Susan again before going to Doctor. Where do you see financial inclusion in the next 5, 10 years in Nigeria? What should be our lookout for? What should be our next line of actions? What should be something good that we will be excited to see in the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years? Susan.
Okay, sorry. So thank you so much. And I want to commend the efforts of the engagement to also sensitize our financial institutions, because this seems to, for me, we need to redefine financial inclusion beyond CSR to core business. In the next 5-10 years, we need to see more of core business strategy, not just corporate social responsibility. And inclusion will shift from deed to smart business. That is what it should be. Why do I say this? Because inclusion enhances markets, and persons with disabilities represent untapped customer segments from all the places integrate inclusion into product design and risk models. It will drive inclusion sector, not just as optional add-ons or let's just put them. You are not doing a favor. You are adding to your business, and that is why I call it. And then it's important to treat accessibility for persons with disability as quality service, not charity. Not charity, it is quality service to clients. And so with conversations like this, not a one-off thing, but continuously and also having critical engagements physically with financial institutions, I believe that inclusion goals will move to performance metrics. This way, we are looking at incentivizing for organizations that are able to even drive inclusion. And for me, this will drive the leadership and having persons with disability both at the demand and supply aspect. Because when doctor was speaking, I heard doctors speak about even employment. It's not just making it accessible. Persons with disability also need to work in this space, because it is when you have persons with disability, you will intentionally drive financial inclusion. This happens in other sectors where you have persons with disabilities who are qualified working in this space. It will help to drive financial inclusion. And the last but not the least for me would be financial inclusion will be equal to financial growth. It's not just about goodwill, because most times Nigerians were used to goodwill, CSR, but we are looking at beyond the CSR model. How do we begin to model what it is to drive financial inclusion for persons with disabilities?
Thank you so much, Madam Susan, for those parting words. And I believe that if all of this, we can achieve this in the next 5-10 years, we would not be in the position we are in terms of financial inclusion for persons with disability. Yes, Dr. Adebayo, your parting shots should be, what would be your advice going forward for regulators, financial inclusion, experts, for financial institutions, and even persons with disability themselves, to ensure that we move from commitments, policy to practice, commitments to actions, and meeting up with the global standard as it relates to financial inclusion for persons with disability. Doctor.
Okay, I think I just adopt what Susan has said. I don't need to repeat all of those, and I also already said a few things earlier when you asked about the role of regulators or all of that. So everybody just needs to do their job. And of course, it only makes a good business sense for banks and financial institutions to realize that there's no money with disability. There's no MWD, money with disability. Money is money. And one good thing about the disability community is any service provider that provides accessible or inclusive services, the community tend to move en bloc, to such institutions. So it only makes a good business sense. We have always said when we are discussing the economic benefits of inclusion or the business benefits of inclusion, there's this saying that why serve only some customers if you can serve all. So is there anything that says the bank shouldn't serve everybody? So all that and of course this is just trying to make well simply trying to say that inclusion makes a lot of business sense. So apart from the rights approach to looking at inclusion, it's a human rights issue. It's also an economic issue. It's a business issue. And I know those in the financial sector are out to make profit on their investment. So we must look at disability as part of the bigger customer base that we're all looking out for. Okay. So without necessarily repeating myself, I think every financial institutions, banks, insurance should be looking out, making their products and services, tailoring it to make sure they are accessible to persons with disabilities. If they need support, I'm sure they can get to the organizations of people with disabilities and other experts to advise them on how to do this. So again, there's no money with disability. Money is money. So I just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you so much, Susan, for having you to have this conversation together this afternoon.
Let's go.
To just summarize both Susan's and Dr. Adebayo's parting words is that financial inclusion is about quality service, not just charity or CSR, as the case may be. And financial and inclusion goals would also help improve performance index, a metrics index for not just in terms of economic or profit index, but even performance for potential or current employees who currently work in the financial sector. And also that we need to invest both in the demand and supply end by promoting workplace disability inclusion in the financial sector, and that the financial inclusion will be equal to financial growth. Financial inclusion is a good business case, and that disability inclusion is also a good business case, and that inclusion itself is about business issues, is about profit making, and it's about ensuring that everyone can contribute ably to both our national, continental economic growth. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. And at this point, we would round off the webinar. Thank you so much once again, Doctor. Thank you, Susan, for creating time to be with us this afternoon. Have a lovely afternoon over there. Bye.